Well, I have been attacked by a rhino, and I'm not talking about a rhino in the sense that a lot of Republicans talk about today, because I am running against a very respected man, a friend, and I'm running for an office. I'm not running against a friend, because this office belongs to you. It's yours, and until we get back to that, things are going to continue as they have for the last 2 decades. It's up to you. It's not the elected officials' fault. It's our fault because we haven't held them accountable. And so my pledge to you is to work very, very hard to involve you in that process and to go back out there and make that contact with you, door to door, if that's the way it needs to be done. And this is a district that's small enough where that's the way it should be done. You should know who your neighbors are. You should be out in the community. You should be accessible, and they should know your name. It's just not right to me that for a $17,000 job, we have an establishment that's willing to spend $60,000 to $80,000 to keep an incumbent in office. That's not what it should be. It should be public service. And so, before I forget, I'm going to retire these shoes. And thank you, Nikki, for sharing that. I have actually enjoyed that part of the campaign. I enjoy it a lot more than being up here with a microphone. I'm a workhorse, not a show horse. I leave that to my wife. She is far better at the microphone than I'll ever be. And I always like to create a stage for her, because she is very, very talented, as you can see by her art and through her wonderful things that she's accomplished with her life. So anyway, you've already met Kathy, and she will have a time to speak here at the end. I'm going to briefly go into why I'm running. I'm running to give you a choice. This seat has been held for 22 years. If we continue to elect the same people over and over again, we're going to get the same results. And so, like Herman said, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And when you go against a 22-year incumbent, you learn very, very quickly that most of the elected officials are going to endorse the incumbent. That's from whom they get their money to continue on the city level and on the county level and in the state level. They all work very, very closely together. I encourage you to become familiar with the Georgia ethics side. I think there's some revelations there that would frighten you. It would give a whole new meaning to the good old boy network. But I can't dwell on that, because my goal in this campaign is to go and to serve. So we're not going to single people out. We're not going to run a negative campaign. We're just going to offer you a choice. So very quickly, my elevator speech that I give at the doors is basically this. I'm running on self-imposed term limits. The reason that's important is that sets an example for others. And maybe voters will catch on and understand that if we insist that of all our candidates, we can eliminate the influence of the special interests and the lobbyists under the gold dome. To me, it's about public service, going and serving, and then having the passion to teach somebody else how to do it. Because I know that I can't change the world by myself. I know I can make a difference. But if I serve you for 8 years, then, I can do something, but I realize that this is just one facet of my life. It's not the only thing in my life. And so it's in perspective. That's what we need for people for serving in public office. They don't need to go there and make a career of it or think that they're not expendable, because no one person can change the world just by staying in office for that period of time. My second point is, let's reduce spending. We're all Republicans who believe in limited government. And limited government means that you run efficiently. And we've got a Republican governor, a Republican Senate and House, yet somehow this year we raised our budget by $300 million. Well, that doesn't sound like very much. We've got 10 million people in the state of Georgia. That's only $30. But when you really look at who pays the taxes, it's a lot more than $30. But here again, don't be fooled by this idea of a balanced budget, because in essence what happens is they'll budget to that budget, and they'll reach it, and they'll, talk about how great it is that we have a balanced budget. But they over-budget it, and then a lot of that money goes into the general fund, and then it gets used for other things other than what it was budgeted for. So I am suggesting that we use the Connie Mack plan. We take our budget and we reduce it down to 90% of where we are today. I mean, that's a good biblical principle. You use 10% to invest in the future. You use 10% to get out from under the yoke of the federal government. We're $13 billion of our budget comes from the federal government, and as a state, we're a net giver rather than taker in terms of that. But as you all well know, every time you take a federal dollar, there's a string attached. And that's part of the problem we have. We've lost our state sovereignty. And so I'll be a champion for the 17th Amendment, trying to return some of that sovereignty to the state of Georgia and to you as the citizens of Georgia. Because you are unique, you're Georgians, and there's nobody like you. The third point is this: I believe in the local control of schools. I believe that the local school board is the closest elected body to the classroom, the teachers, and the students. That is where decisions need to be made. Historically, that is what our education system in America has been about, because only then can values be transferred that are our values and not somebody else's. We have a threat in the state of Georgia. It's called Common Core. It was instituted in 2010 by then Governor Sonny Perdue. It was an offshoot of the National Governors Association. And if you've studied anything about legislation in the state of Georgia, you know that there are think tanks out there, and they suggest all these different legislations, and then they feed it into the system, and then at the end of the day, you've got 83 bills that nobody's read, and they pat themselves on the back for passing legislation. Common Core came in with money attached to it. It was never voted on, and now it's being implemented in the state of Georgia. My opponent is the chairman of the House Education Committee. He is the face of Common Core in the state of Georgia. Now, here's my problem with it. I have no problem with standards, because developmentally, the curriculum can be developed to where the child is. But those standards need to come from our community and not from some publisher or some computer company, or hardware company, or some political ideologue that wants to insert their own revisionist history. So curriculum and standards, those need to remain local. My fear is this: if we allow that authority to shift further away from the local school board, then it's only a matter of time that we become slaves to the federal government with the carrot and the stick. So that is partially why I'm running. That's one issue of many for me. And I just, would be happy and tickled pink if I could succeed in setting the example on term limits and getting us to get to the point where we can return some of your taxpayer dollars to you, and if we can retain that local control of schools.